We're good? Live action cameras.
Now that we're on.
All right.
Sit down before we start.
October 8th.
Pretty good.
I hope you don't have sore ribs.
Great. No. I'm ahead of myself.
Don't rush things. You still want to enjoy warmer weather.
I'm sorry. Gentlemen first this time.
Yeah.
All right, 6:05, we'll call the meeting to order. Turn it over to you, Greg.
All right, call the roll. Canfield?
Here.
Beecham? Here. Caldwelder?
Here.
Schwabman?
Here.
Spicer?
Here.
All five are here. We have a quorum.
All right, that brings us to item 2, approval of the agenda.
I have an item to add to the agenda. Item 5B is, will be retiree cost of living adjustment.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll support.
We have a motion and support. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the approval of the minutes. We have the August 14th regular board meeting minutes in your packet.
I motion to approve the minutes as written.
Support.
We have a motion and support. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the closed session minutes of the same meeting.
I move that we accept the minutes of the closed session.
I support.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to public comment for items not on the agenda. With no public here, we'll have no comment. That brings us to action items. Greg, I'll turn that over to you.
All right, the first item on your agenda is the Lowell Energy Center heating contract. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the background on that. We had heaters that went out last spring. We used a couple temporary heaters to get through April and May. At that time, we were discussing whether we were going to use heat off of the biodigester in order to provide heat to the energy center or not. And we ultimately determined it wasn't going to work out. So we're at a point this year where we need to get something installed, and we had looked at replacing the single heater that we have there now, which is called a Bonanza. The cost to replace that was about $29,000. That contractor came back and offered us another option with 4 smaller units strategically placed around the building that provided more even heat within the building. And so we're thinking that's the best option. I didn't provide you the quote for that second option and handed it out tonight. The cost for that is $26,821 by this particular vendor. In a conversation since I put the packet out though with Greg, he thinks that it would probably be a good idea to go out for another bid, even though this is a contractor that we've used to do most of our heating in both buildings for the last several years. So I'm going to ask that we table this for this meeting, and I'm going to go get a couple of other bids, and I'll bring it back to you next month, if that's okay.
Is there any timing on this, Greg, where that we could approve this just to the low bid? Would that help? Or-
Sure, that would help.
That might be an option, just we're getting into the fall season, but
Right.
my thought was just a number this large that it'd be good to have a second bid on that.
Is this something that you do, Greg?
It is, but I wouldn't want to bid on it, having seen the other bid, that really wouldn't be ethical.
But if we're going out for other bids, I mean, I guess
Right.
I'm looking at if it's possible. I certainly, and I know the feeling because you're on the board and all that kind of stuff. But I would like to see, I don't know if Arctic Heating does. I'd like if there's a company locally that is suitable to do that kind of work. I certainly would like to explore, and whether that be Canfield's, Arctic heating and cooling.
There's a couple of options. Arctic would be one. They're a little more residential, but this isn't a huge deal. They could handle that. The other one that I did recommend would be Progressive. They're out on the end of town. They are a big commercial company. So, but we could certainly offer Arctic the opportunity to bid on that. But, you know, I appreciate the offer, but I'll still decline to bid on it.
So based on what you know, Greg, is this high in the ballpark?
Well, the only tough bit, to me, it might be a little bit high, but where you get gas supply, you're going from a central unit that had one gas line going now to 4 remote units, which I think it's a good plan to split it up and do it that way. The gas piping may be a significant part of that, which brings it up to this number, but I just felt that based on the size of the number, and there could potentially be some savings here that we should look at.
Yeah, I think that's wise to have more than one bid.
I agree. But if you want to approve up
But
to,
we-
you know, some
Yeah.
amount, that's fine. That would move it along quicker for sure.
Yeah, I think we could, you know, my thought was we could approve the lower bids when we get them. You know, we've seen the maximum number now is 26. And if that turns out,
Which, from the information, that's down.
that were just passed out tonight, 26,821.
But that was the original
The original was
20.
29.
29.
That was
And
for
the
one
other-
big central
the
unit
other
again.
configuration.
But this one,
Okay.
you're looking for a max of 27 is what you said on here,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I mean, potentially could come in.
Yeah, if we can save $5,000 if somebody's hungry.
Absolutely.
Because it's, I kind of agree with Greg. I mean, if we wait, you know, till our October meeting to approve it,
It's gonna be a
and
little
then,
late, maybe.
and then it's 2 to 3 weeks to get the work done. You know, we're almost into November.
Who knows what the weather will be.
It's chilly today.
So why was this not specifically budgeted?
Because we didn't, at the time we did the budget, we didn't know whether we were going to be going with the heating from the
Oh, the waste heat from
the waste heat from the biodigester and how that might work out and if it was going to be ready and so on and so forth. So, I mean, the dollars are there. I have a revised capital plan, you know, that shows where the dollars are coming from, but it wasn't a specific line item that we had.
Okay.
So how do we want to structure
I would make make a motion to go out for additional bids, and we approve an amount of not to exceed 26,821. I mean, that's this bid here. So if other bids come in lower to, with Greg and Greg, have those two look them over, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's Greg Canfield's expertise. So I'm comfortable with Greg and Greg
making the decision?
making the decision, but not to exceed the $26,821.
Well, Greg Pierce would like recommend, right? He would evaluate and recommend to us or Greg in the interim, here's who I want to use.
Sure, we have a
That's
good
the process,
history with
right? Okay.
FHC. They're kind of our contractor that we use on the buildings, but I think just when you start getting to these numbers of this size, that never hurts to get a second number, and if the local guy ends up being, you know, a little bit less, it's good to support local when we can.
Absolutely.
So we have a motion
I support.
and support.
I do.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you for that little sidetrack there. Next item is the one we added, MERS retiree cost of living adjustment. I believe I gave you passed out a handout on that. Everybody
I
have
got
it? Okay.
Yes.
This is something we've been doing every year, as you know, for a number of years. Last year, we changed it up a little bit. We had normally been doing a automatic 2%. That's one of the standard benefit E's that MERS has for retiree cost of living. They have another option, which is called the flexible option, which allows you to pick the percentage that you want to do each year. It's not a standard 2%. And so last year, we did it based on the IRS recommendation for expected increase in Social Security cost of living, which was 1.7%. This year, we looked that number up, and it was 1.69%. So we went ahead as staff and submitted to MERS for the evaluation on that number, in that was the number that we used last year, the IRS number. So it came back very similar to last year. The number that we would be required to put into the system is $34,193 versus last year was $33,340. And so recommending that we go ahead and adopt the flexible E-benefit for retirees this year at a cost of $34,193.
So basically the same thing.
Basically the same. Anybody have any questions, or?
What does MERS stand for?
Michigan Employment Retirement
Oh, thank you.
System.
Sitting here trying to think of what that was. Thank you.
No, I think it's nice that we're not just taking the blanket 2% every year, that whatever the 0.3% savings is to us, but it all helps. A few thousand.
So I move that we recommend to the city council to adopt a flexible E-benefit of 1.69% increase.
And I support.
We have a motion and support. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you. So that'll be on your next agenda?
Not Monday.
No, not Monday, I mean, the next one. Okay, absolutely.
A reminder.
Yes. Okay, the performance data. You may remember last month when we did the performance data and the income statement, we had an anomaly in that we had a pretty significant variance in the number of days that we had in our month for meter reading. So we had some lower revenue than was expected. And so we indicated that, again, that'll be smoothed out as we move through the year. And we had some issues with new meter readers and when they could read, and so the timing varied from what it normally does. So there was a shorter number of days in the billing cycle last month compared to this month. So we've got that straightened out. And total electric sales for the month were good. It was over 700,000, slightly less than it was the same month last year. The total number of residential customers is up over the previous year. Residential sales were down slightly, as were the kilowatt hours used by residents. Again, this summer's been a cooler summer than last summer. Number of commercial customers has stayed the same. We've had some increase in the number of kilowatt hours used by commercial customers, and therefore the dollars associated with them over the previous year. So the last item on there, we haven't seen any activity in for almost 4 years, internal generation. And even though it doesn't show up for the month of August, we did run the first Friday in September, that very hot day. We were called to run by MISO, so our new combustion turbine fired up and ran for 3 hours and made us some money. So that's a good thing. Next month we'll be able to have a number in that column.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great.
We were all tickled, right, Tom?
Yes.
A lot of work finally come to fruition.
I have a question.
Yes.
I noticed that for comparing the current month to the month of the previous year,
Mm-hmm.
that the residential customers went down, the sales went up, and the commercial customers stayed the same, but their sales went down. So I guess what
Where
might
is
account
that?
for that? I'm looking at the current month versus of the current year versus the previous year.
Right, so the number of residential customers went up.
So the residential customers,
Went down.
number of customers went down, but the residential sales went up. The commercial customers did not go down, their sales did go down. And so it just seems like a backwards trend, and I'm just wondering what would cause that?
Different energies.
The commercial.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's like...
These columns right here?
Yeah, well, the whole...
But sales went down for
Yeah,
residential.
it's in the same direction.
No, the residential sales went up.
Residential sales went from 1.8 million current month previous year to 1.6.
Or,
It's the
sorry, I was
commercial-
reading it the wrong way, but yeah.
Commercial ones went.
I guess what I'm
up
saying
a
is
little
that the trend is backwards compared to each other. So the residential, we have more residential people but less sales in the current month.
So it
Whereas
has
we have the
to,
same commercial and more
We
sales.
had a hotter summer last year.
So I'm just wondering like what
it has to do with
More air
the number of
conditioning.
people.
what they
with the
use
heat
and
and whether they're running their air conditioners or not.
Last year was a really hot summer, and I think everybody ran air conditioners nonstop.
but even
this
the
year they don't.
businesses
It's
wouldn't,
pretty
or-
mild this year.
I'm just wondering why.
That's why
businesses would have an
residential
opposite
went
trend,
down.
and I'm just kind of curious if
That would
there's
be my
something
guess.
common to that, or if that's just a weird peculiarity that doesn't normally happen. I mean, that's more out of curiosity than anything. I was just
Right.
wondering what would drive a
Well, the commercial
opposite trend
sales
between
went
the
up,
two.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying residential sales went down.
Right.
We have more numbers. Well, a lot of times, the commercial sales, peak performance, a lot of them have different rates. And if they're peaking out, then they get jumped up into a higher rate.
Okay.
So I don't know without looking at it.
I was
without
hoping
further.
that meant that our businesses were busier too.
But
Mhm.
they could actually jump up into a higher pay scale.
The commercial.
Commercial fluctuates on.
Based on demand.
Based on demand, where they fall.
Okay.
But
And
they
so-
could also be using more energy. So I know, like Alan told me, he's added a whole shift at his plant, which,
Well, and another
So
thing is
there's-
that all the businesses are open during the hot part of the day, and a lot of residences turn their air conditioners down during the day when they're gone, when they're at work. And so, you know, it's really mostly a function of weather and the fact that there's different hours of use during those time periods.
Okay.
Probably the commercial is less temperature related than the residential.
Right. The business is open, it's probably got its air conditioning on, it's set, it runs. And residential has probably more impetus to not have it running during the day if they're not there. Have their thermostat control devices on their thermostats and turn it down during the day.
Okay. Like, yeah, I just thought it was interesting that they had a completely opposite trend month to month, or from the previous year.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for
not-
that to show up.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's
Well,
alarming or anything, I was kind
Right.
of wondering if there was something there that...
Well, I do know, like, there are certain businesses that have used a lot more electricity this year, specifically in the last month. Like, a couple big commercial King Million and Lowell really used a lot more compared to last year, so
Okay.
you can have the same number of customers, they're going up, but if they had maintained a constant usage compared to last year, that total category might have seen the same decrease. But I agree, like, if it's a little bit cooler this summer, they can live with not having the air conditioning on, where a business, they just have to, the machines are running, they might have to keep their air on no matter what.
Yeah,
So, there's probably a lot of variables, but
okay. So it sounds like it's probably just a random thing. And that
Yeah,
most of the time they probably would track a little more.
it's not uncommon to see them in different directions at any
Okay.
given point in time.
Most of the manufacturers aren't running air conditioner in their manufacturing facility. I mean, that's, if you look at metric, you look at performs, I mean, the
there's
doors are
something there.
open and
Right.
I guess it sounds like if they have if they use electricity for other stuff too, that
Right.
they might just be
Right, well,
different business.
for example, Mark was just saying that King Milling had a longer delivery season this year because of the growing season.
Right.
So they had the dryers on more for a longer extended period of time because of the way the deliveries were coming in. So, you know, just little things like that can
Yeah.
have an impact.
Okay, cool.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks you guys.
Yeah, no problem. And you can see that when you go down to the next column, when we're looking a month back, we're looking at the total requirement kilowatts for June of 2014 versus 13. The total requirements are up fairly significantly from the previous year. And June was a hotter month than July and August. So again, that shows some of the temperature relation to what happened. Okay, and then the bottom half of that page are the billing statistics. That hasn't changed. We did the quarterly last month. And on the flip side, the first group of numbers is our cash and investments. You can see that that's down slightly a little bit. We've been making payments for the biodigester expenses. And again, as we talked about last month, we had a low cash flow month. So that total of $1,670,000 is down a little bit from the previous month. The delinquents, we added that last section, the delinquent balance of inactive accounts. We can see that is fairly consistent from this month and the previous month, but down fairly nicely from the previous year. And again, the balance outstanding from the previous month on those active accounts was zero for this month. So we're seeing that start to become a regular thing. So that's great. Last year when we were looking at these reports in that particular category, we were having a significant difference between last year and this year. You can see last year, this month was zero also. So we're starting to get consistent in that area. So that's great. Kudos to the staff. The aging analysis shows about the same this month as the previous month, but again, down significantly from the previous year.
Are you finding that more people are doing like the online and setting up automatic pay? Is that helping?
That's gradually increasing, yes. And we have, I think, Sharon, we have probably more people that are willing to set up payment accounts and keeping them, as opposed to trying to set them up and then defaulting on them. I think we're not only getting better at setting them up, but they're getting better at recognizing they need to keep those payments going. So that's working well. Income statement. Again, we had a more normal billing cycle this month, so we were pretty close to budget. The revenue was $16,000 off budget, but year to date we're still in the ballpark. We're less than 2% off of budget year to date. And as we go down through expenses, the big one is the purchase power. And, again, because of the warmer weather, our purchase power costs for the first 2 months of this fiscal year, July and August, are under what we budgeted. So we've got a under budget condition in purchase power, about $17,000. So it's always nice to head into the fall and the winter with that condition, because if we run into some cold months like we did last year, then we've got a little space there to fall back on. Again, as you go down through most of the rest of the expenses, we're under budget year to date. And down to the final operating expenses, the middle of page 4, we're under budgeted by about $34,000 year to date, which gives us a great operating income. We had an operating income of $120,000 this month, and we're over budget $15,000 in operating budget. And the last item on the next page is our net income, almost right on budget. I don't know if Steve's ever been closer on a given month than a few $100s, but we're pretty darn close, and $12,000, $13,000 over budget year to date for the first 2 months. So a good income statement. On to the capital expenses. We have the two sheets. One shows the actual expenses and where they went. We have total expenses first 2 months of the year of $156,000. We have roughly $982,000 left in our capital expense budget. The flip side of the page shows the individual projects where that money was spent year to date. And you can see we still have money left in all the categories that we budgeted as projects for this year. So we're moving along. Next sheet is our outage summary. We had 5 outages in the month of August. They had a total of 132 customers out. And again, when you look at the statistics in the lower right-hand corner, our average service availability index is still 99.98%. If you look at the other ones, like our SAIDI and SAFE, were about the same as last year or better in terms of how long those outages were and what the average outage was for our customers who were out. The flip side tells where those outages occurred and what was the cause. You have a couple of blown fuses again. We had a CT that caught fire, and we had a tree.
So one was a repeat failure. Is that what? Am I reading that correctly? That
We had the same thing happen in the same spot twice, yes.
but one was just an equipment failure, and one was a tree.
No.
No,
They're both-
they're both blown fuses on Pratt Lake.
I thought one was categorized as a tree or weather. I mean, sorry. Like one was an overhead equipment failure, and one was a weather cause.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying on the first
Yeah.
page.
So there was only one.
Yeah, it looks like maybe
One
one
tree.
got put in the wrong category.
This is the last one that says
Let's see.
36th Street. I mean, is that the same blown fuse as Pratt Lake and 36?
No,
Pratt
that
Lake?
was a different
It looks like that's different.
spot.
I was just kind of curious if there was something happened to the same part, the same spot. It was just, I
Right.
don't know, it just seems kind of like, ooh, I'm sure those customers weren't too thrilled about that.
Up there. Could have been lightning
But-
hitting it when fuse blows down.
So they could have just been hit twice.
That area, yes.
Okay.
Right.
Is that typically what blows a fuse? Just lightning would.
Lightning and or animals usually blow the fuses.
Okay.
Two main reasons. And with all the storms we had, we had a lot of
Yeah,
lightning.
we've had quite a bit of that. So 61 people were unlucky.
Any other questions?
Are you on that lake?
I am.
I see you're one of those.
I'm one of the
61.
lucky ones. Right. Okay,
Did you call and complain when you were officing that?
no. But I do call to make sure there's somebody on.
Someone
Taking
taking
care
care
of
of
it.
it.
All right. I have the benefit of an inside line, so I can keep track.
Okay.
All right, on to the manager's report, I guess. Both MMEA and MPPA, there was not really anything new to report at this time. The MPPA is doing something that's similar to what we're doing a little bit, and one of the reasons you all received a policy book today is MPPA is in the process of reviewing and revising their governance policy. So I don't have anything to report there. That's where we've been spending most of our time. Just a reminder that the MMEA annual conference is in Bay City, October 1st through 3rd. And if you have any interest in going, please get a hold of Sharon.
What's our deadline for signing up for that? I'm kind of a day-by-day guy.
A day-by-day
When I
guy.
get, within a week, I'll know if I can get away or not, but
We just happen to know somebody on the board there, so we can probably
that's
get you.
fine.
a week ahead of time, we might still be able to sign up. 'Cause
Yes.
I would encourage board members, anybody that can,
I was going to ask if anybody knows now that they might be able to attend.
I'm going to try.
Okay. Good. Good. All right. So yes, as Greg indicated, we can get you signed up. That's not a problem.
He might be a week. I'm
Day
minute
by
by
day.
minute. Right at the present time, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Just a couple of things with APPA there. Sharon's going to their Customer Connections Conference this fall, and Steve's going to be attending one of their financial and management training conferences this fall. We also have, we're in the process, Tom's steering the collection of information for our next RP3 submission, and so that's due at the end of the month this month. Thanks to Tom and Sharon and Steve, they're doing most of the work to get that information assembled. And again, Tom is going to be part of that RP3 review process as he's part of the APPA team this fall. But we're hoping for another good designation from RP3. Systems generation and upgrade. We had a good tour last month. Thanks to Pam and also to Doug and Tom for the information they passed on to people. We had 2 or 3 residents or customers there besides board members and council members, so that was good. Continue work on the Rolls-Royce turbine, and we're keeping Doug busy moving forward as our funds allow. And Amy, our summer intern, is back in school, but she's still finishing up a few hours on the weekends and on Friday. She's, I'm sorry, Taylor Alming. Yes, excuse me, Taylor. Anyway, she's been doing some research on fiber to the home, and we'll have a report hopefully next month on her findings with respect to that. Tom, I believe, is meeting maybe tomorrow? Tuesday next week there was a gentleman that made a request at a council meeting a couple months ago, and he's tracked us down, and so Tom's going to meet with him next week regarding Lowell Light and Power's potential involvement in a fiber to the home project. So again, it's a pretty big project. It's something that would take a lot of planning, and there's a number of ways to do it. But we're looking at it, and Taylor has been in touch with APPA, and I think we have information from other communities that may have done fiber to the home projects and how they worked and if it was successful and those types of things. So hopefully we'll have some information to you shortly.
Quick question,
Yes, sir.
who types these up? No, I was just wondering if we have another, I know the ledger report, we have a new employee, but on this, I didn't know if we had a new employee, but being sarcastic. His nickname is Barney. It's Doug Barnes, but we have him listed as Doug Barney.
Yeah. Well, you can get him either way.
He can get him either way, okay.
It's on his employment app that way. We
Is
just-
it?
Yeah.
Doug or Barney? Yeah, my bad. All right, moving on, hopefully. The city council approved our request for an installment purchase of the truck to perform the manure hauling. The truck has been delivered to D&D and the repairs are underway. It should be ready shortly. I did want to make a couple of clarifications. There was an article in the Ledger today by Mr. Thielander, and there were some comments that were incorrect, one being that the amount of time that this truck will run, it's only going to be on the road an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week. It's not like it's running back and forth full time, making deliveries of manure to the biodigester. It's just once a day at this point. There'll be additional trips during the startup process where we're trying to get the digester filled up for the first time, but after we get through that, then the anticipated amount of time involved is only about an hour and a half a day to make that one trip. The other thing is that the truck is purchase price is being amortized over 9 years, so the cost to do this is not as steep as what he indicated in the paper, having amortized that as a capital cost over 9 years. And we're receiving a revenue from SPART of $20,000 a year to be able to cover this expense. So there's no cost to our customers for providing this service as part of the biodigester project. There's not going to be any rate increase to our customers because of this activity with the biodigester project. So I just wanted to make that clear.
So what are we doing to get that message out to the community?
I
Because
have
they are,
just did it for the first time since it came out in the Ledger today.
okay.
Okay.
Because we had talked last month too about doing some sort of a PR campaign just so that people are aware there may be slight odor just as we're getting the biodigester up and
Right.
running. And
Right.
I mean, has there been any more thought to
We're going to
certain
be
things?
putting information on the blog, and we're going to be
Okay.
putting information on the website about
Okay.
that as we get closer to that time. Yep. Any other questions about that? All right. Adopt a Road, our next scheduled cleanup will be September 29th. Anybody who's interested is welcome to join us.
Meeting at the same place?
Same place, same time. 5:05, maybe 5:10, depending on traffic. Okay. Video camera, we are being videoed this evening, and so we're getting that started. Sharon was able to get the camera and get it set up, and Al helped us today work out some of the bugs. And, our intention is to put it on YouTube. It seems to be potentially the best way to get it on for the public. There's some discussion about whether we'll be able to facilitate that because of the length of our meetings. Our meetings are much longer than the city council meetings. Whether we get the whole meeting up in one unit or not, but I think we can, so.
Gary, you're not going to correct that typo? You don't know what Y2 is?
Yeah. That's the shape of PVC, right?
That's right. Yep.
Sorry, Greg, we just
I
had to
know.
give you a little grief.
That's right.
YouTube for 2-year-olds.
That's right.
Why?
Yeah.
We did have a customer that complained at the last council meetings that the meetings haven't been televised, or she didn't have access to them. So hopefully we'll have that resolved. And, we had a plan in place. It just takes a little while to implement it and get it working. So.
Complain because it wasn't on YouTube, or complain because it wasn't on the cable?
Wasn't available
channel.
to view. There were a month or two that we weren't even able to tape because Al was no longer providing the service, and we hadn't figured out what we were going to do. We hadn't purchased a camera yet. We didn't have it set up. So
And did you realize they're welcome to a copy of the minutes, right?
yes, absolutely. So. Okay, moving on. The buried line policy review. I had sent a memo out a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure that it went through, or if it went through to everybody. I did provide copies today to anybody who may have missed it. But in any event, it describes that, again, at a city council meeting, a council member brought up the fact that there were apparently, based on his observation, a couple of places in the community where the buried lines were not as deep as what we quote-unquote require in our policy. And so we've looked at it, we've looked at our policy. I've included some information for you Regarding our policy, I highlighted some of the areas in terms of what we require on primary. We asked that it be 36 inches below grade, and on secondary at least 24. We have a form here that the contractors need to fill out. We asked that it be at least 30 if they can't get 36 or 24 for secondary. And what happens is the contractor puts the trench in and puts the conduit in the bottom of the trench, and we come and inspect it, and we approve that it's at acceptable depth, and we're basically done at that point. We have no further involvement. And apparently what's happening in some instances is that when it comes time to do the final grading on the site, some of that soil is moved away in the final grading plan, and they end up being less than the depth that we observed when we did our inspection. So it's really a question of what responsibility do we have after that point? Do we have a responsibility after that point? There's special conditions that I included for you in the National Electric Safety Code that says if it's under concrete, it doesn't have to be that deep. If it's under asphalt, it doesn't have to be that deep. The National Electric Safety Code information indicates criteria that we use, the 36 inches and the 24 inches for cable that's direct buried without conduit. We use conduit, so again, that decreases the depth that it needs to be. So we're going above and beyond what the National Electric Safety Code requires in terms of what we require in our policy, but we still have occasions where somebody's final grade is not going to meet what our criteria is. So what we've done is we've gone to the city attorney. The city attorney is going to draft a release of liability type document that we will give to the customer when we hook them up at the end of the project. That says, if you've done some final grade work or if you've moved dirt around on your property that makes it so that those lines are not at the depth that we requested, then we don't have any more liability there, that it's your responsibility. So I don't know, open it up for discussion among the board. If you think we need to do anything else, if there's anything else that we should be doing, we're now going to be taking pictures of the inspection when we do it, so that we can put with each work order that we did inspect it and it was appropriate at the time we inspected it, so that that's not a question or an issue. But there's nothing to stop a property owner even 3, 4, 5 years later to say, oh, I want to change how my landscaping looks, and so I'm going to either put a berm in here or cut some soil out here and plant flowers and trees. And I don't think that we can go around and be checking every time some property owner makes a change to their property to see if those things are still buried where they're supposed to be. They have to take some responsibility someplace.
And that kind of goes back to the whole mistake thing, right?
Right.
If you're going to do significant digging on your property, then that's what
Right.
mistakes for, so you don't
Right.
do that.
Yeah, and not only do we put our require that they use conduit and pull the wire through the conduit, the contractors are required to put a warning tape 12 inches above where they bury it, so that even if somebody does dig and didn't do the misdig, or the misdig was wrong, they should at least dig through a piece of tape that shows them that something is buried below.
So, let's say that we go out, they're putting the conduit in, we determine that it's the 30 inches or whatever, 20 foot, whatever for that situation, whatever it legally needs to be to meet the national standards. And later, they do some, and we haven't hooked them up to the power yet. Do we have and we later find out that they've changed some things and it's no longer meets that standard? Do we have, I know you're talking about having the lawyer create a document that would relieve us of any liability, but at that point, do we have the right to say, sorry, we're not hooking your power up because it doesn't meet, you've altered it or whatever, and
We can do that if we know that it's occurred, but there's no real way for us to know that it's occurred unless we
'Cause
go out
they've
and
already covered it.
re-inspect
Unless you make them
everything.
dig it up and show you again.
Right. I mean, we assume that they're
Yeah.
gonna follow whatever site plan the planning commission approves and that, they're not moving dirt around places that they weren't supposed to.
There are locators that will tell you exactly where it is. We purchased one recently for $6,000 that will tell you it's 12 inches down, so. But how far do we have to go? I mean, I think
Right.
having a release is a good thing, and clearly, we have a document shows what it needs to be. It was, taking pictures, I think, is real good. But, we can't increase the cost to our ratepayers by, double and triple, quadruple checking everybody. That, there's some responsibility of the property owner and the contractor. They know what the requirements are, and they have the
Yeah.
responsibility really to follow that.
Anybody?
So,
have it?
I guess if they were to change something, and that, let's say some customer, property owner, like put in, I don't know what, they dug it up or made it really close, and then a big truck came and broke the line and caused an accident. I mean, if there's that release, then it kind of says, hey, that's your problem, not, I mean, we'd obviously have to go fix it.
Right.
But
In terms of any
assuming they would, like-
liability
Right.
for what happened, then we don't have any liability.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how much liability we have anyway, in that we're a
Right.
governmental entity. But at least it makes it clear to the property owner that the onus is on him and that it's his responsibility.
Okay. So it seems like there's parallels, because I remember, like with the city, there was an issue, I think, of a road that had been paved and came back. We found out later that they only used like, I don't know, 4 inches of fill when it was supposed to be 8, or I forget what the numbers were, but then by that point, it's like, well, so we got, cheated by the people that built the road, but can't really do anything about it at this point, which I thought was kind of surprising. That I would have thought we could say, hey, you got to either fix it or reimburse us for the cheapness of the road or something. But and then the same thing happened at the airport with their easement going for that. They hired a company to survey the trees and create the easements. Then after all that was done, they came back and said, oh, we missed a few hundred trees, and now you still don't have an easement. But then, so I'm kind of thinking, well, how can companies come back and tell us, oh, we didn't do the job you paid us for, but it's okay? And I just don't want letting party kind of get in that situation where,
Right.
they install a line, something happens, and they said, oh, well,
These people aren't working for us, though. That's the difference. They're working for the owner.
mhm.
And so that's really why the responsibility needs to lie with them. It's
That's a
not-
good point.
It's not
Right.
work that they've done for us incorrectly. And again, when they get it ready and want it inspected, we come out and inspect it.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody could,
Okay.
it's not any different than building inspector. Somebody comes out and looks at the plumbing, and the building inspector puts that little yellow thing on there, and then
Then you change
the
it.
homeowner comes in and changes it because that's really not
Yeah.
the way he wanted it, but he did it to get inspected.
Mhm.
And so where does the responsibility lie at that point?
Okay. Well, that's a good point.
But I do like the fact that you are taking a picture of the site so that we have that documented,
Mhm.
that we signed off on it, and it was up to par, what we had to do at what depth, and we walked away. If it does, we run into a truck that does tear this up, and we do find that there was some negligence, that would be the owner that would go back to that contractor, because that contractor allowed that site to go ahead and change that depth, so.
Right.
I agree with you.
Mhm.
The only other thing that we could do, but
It's
it
a
would
great
it
strategy.
would make it more costly for the the customer, and ultimately becomes a deterrent for people that want to do business here, is say, okay, before we come and inspect it, you have to have your final grade surveys in. And so if you have your final grade surveys in, then those will stay until the final grading is done, and that's a visible activity that will allow the contractor and the owner to make sure that they're meeting their final grade requirements, and that it is in fact that the 12 inches or the 24 inches or whatever's required. But
I mean,
So it sounds like from.
wouldn't you have that anyway? If you were,
they don't have their final grade surveys at that point in time.
No, you
marked.
hold up that whole project if we, that's a project killer.
It's just an additional burden.
It's an additional burden
Yeah.
on the,
You know, we want to
hope
welcome
that we wouldn't
businesses
wanna
and
do that.
individuals that want to locate here. And
Right.
I think we're at about the right level here. We're doing everything we can. We're taking pictures. We're having them sign the release that they're responsible if they change the grade. And I think
Right.
we've done what we need to do.
And
Fine.
I think the nice thing about all that process is it doesn't really seem to impose anything new on people trying to develop here.
Nope.
Because it's really us saying, we gotta make sure we'll do inspections, we'll make sure we
Right.
take pictures and give you a release to sign, and that's kind of all stuff on our end, and so it shouldn't really affect their process unless they
right.
I agree.
don't like something.
Giving them one more hoop that they have to jump through, when we can just take care of it by taking that picture, making sure that everybody, and then sign off on it.
The last thing then is, I think the council member that brings this up wants the issues fixed. And so again, where do we step in to make that happen? What would be the process for doing that? So we find out that at a certain place that the conduit isn't at the depth that it's supposed to be.
But it was when we inspected.
But it was when we
initially.
inspected it, yeah. But, so, what's our responsibility to keep the health and welfare of the public safe? Do we go back, do we
And make them dig
Do
it
we
up and show it to us?
dig it up and fix it?
Lower it. Because a
lower
couple
it.
places were a foot too high, 10, 12 inches.
Right,
Oh, really?
But that's a pretty big expense.
it is. And
That's
well, it's
the
an expense for us
contractor,
too. I mean,
Yeah.
because we have to then re-pull the wire or do whatever needs to be done. But who's the enforcement agent here? I mean, that's my question. Who has the authority? Who needs to be the person that goes back and, we're going to turn off your power if you don't fix it? I mean, what's the lever here?
Yeah.
What's the process? Or should there
Well, I
be a
guess
process?
that's a good question. I don't know if that's like.
Well,
that's one thing or
whoever,
what. I mean,
whoever okayed the grade at the final grade inspection, that would fall on that person, correct?
Well, being in the construction business, nobody really monitors final grade that much. I mean, like, one of these locations is the BP station. They had some problems there with the sidewalk and getting the driveways to work, and so changes happen. It's part of the nature. Now, down there, is there a short section that is in the dirt, not under the asphalt? That could-
Probably.
Is that
I
something?
mean, it hasn't been revealed to us exactly where these spots are. They're just, in theory, spots out there where somebody investigated themselves and found out that they were shallow. Same with the second site was the Bigby Coffee site.
But if this individual investigated for themselves and thinks they're shallow, but yet they haven't revealed that to Lowell Light and Power in the city, that seems a little bit odd to me. I mean, if they're that concerned, they certainly would have said, here are the sites, and how can, I mean, is there a safety concern? I guess that's question number one.
it's a secret
Is there-
safety issue.
It's a secrecy. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna take the time to go out and dig stuff up and go, oh, it's not at the right depth, but I'm not gonna tell you where it is, but I'm just concerned about it,
Yeah, that is.
that's
odd.
kind of stupid, you know? You know, why, what's the point? If you're concerned, then let's look at, okay, question number one, is there a safety issue? What kind of safety issues could this potentially present? That, to me, is the question that you have to address, you know? And it seems like it's just a whole lot of, oh, maybe sort of kind of have some problems
Does
possibly.
the owner feel this way, though? That's,
But we're not, it just doesn't make sense to me.
what does the owner say?
Well, and that gets back to my question, who's the enforcement agency here where does the responsibility lie to go back and,
Well, is it a building code violation? I mean, I don't know what it,
I don't think so.
okay.
Whoever signed off on the final inspection, I always thought that was where everything pointed to.
I don't know, is there a
I-
final inspection for grading and that type of thing on a building site? I mean, the planning commission doesn't have anybody that goes out there and inspects, right?
The building inspector is, you have your plumbing, mechanical, and electrical contractors get their inspection
Yeah.
first, then the building contractor comes in and kind of blesses the whole site.
Right.
But is he out there digging up conduit to
No.
see how deep it is?
Yeah, because he figures everybody has signed off all along.
And there's a safety margin built into these things to a certain amount,
Sure.
so that when grade does change by, 6 inches, that we're still have a cushion there.
All right, and that's why we
It's
put
in
everything in conduit.
Right,
So
it's
I
in
guess-
conduit, which exceeds the requirements. We've kind of
So I
gone a
guess
long
that's
mile
my
here.
question. Is there, whoever this individual is that decided to go around town and dig stuff up, my thought is, if they did that, they must have been concerned about safety. So if that's the case, then my question is, A, why would they go dig it up and not actually tell us where the concerns are? That right there presents a problem, but you can't help stupid. So then the next question is, what do you do? I mean, what is the potential risk? I think that's what has to be identified. If the potential risk is, that's how you measure whether or not you need to do something about it.
Well, I think the potential risk in these cases is if someone in a small spot on a commercial parcel that's this big goes out and with a metal hammer tries to pound in a metal stake in the spot that the conduit is and breaks through the conduit, then there could be an accident. So,
Okay.
so what is
Like
the
a-
potential for that risk?
A politician with a really big campaign sign, you know, depending on the politician, it might be a good thing, you
But
know?
We're losing sight, though, where this is somebody's private property. This is somebody's piece of land. So if I said, yes, you can come to my house and put up that big sign, and they pound it in, and there's an accident, that was my boo-boo for not knowing where my lines are at, and I never took that into consideration. That's my fault. So I don't see where this would be Lowell Power's fault. You guys signed off, you took a picture of the depth.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
walked
I don't think
away.
any of it is our fault, it's just
Right.
How far do we chase
How-
this?
how-
Well, it's, you're talking about the
Yeah.
well-being in the community, but again, I just think it's, to me, it boils down to stupidity, not on our part, but
Right.
just, the stupidity, yeah, I'm gonna go out and drive a 10-inch stake into the ground here and not pay attention to what's
Right.
underneath. Or I'm gonna go out and dig things up around town just so I can say I dug them up and found something wrong, but I'm not gonna do anything to fix it. I mean, it just boils down to stupid, as far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
I think the issue is we have the standards we want people to meet, and then if they don't, is there a safety issue? So I think that's the first thing is, I don't know how deep all these things are, but if they're less than this, but there's a reason why it's still considered safe because, okay, it's not 24, but it's 12, but hey, it's already in conduit, and it's in a really tiny area, or whatever, it's the kind of thing that
And if it's not
that's not an
violating.
issue. Or if it's, let's say it's only 4 inches below, but it's in an area that's not used, then just ask them to make sure it doesn't get any shallower. I don't know. I know at least like in the pipeline business, there's,
How hard is it to put a stake through a piece of conduit?
they have to be kind
Well,
of
one of them, and I was going to bring this up, our concern, not this year, but last year when they did the Riverwalk Festival. Everybody who
Mistakes.
digs is supposed to do a mistake. Anytime you put something in the ground, you're supposed to call a mistake for all the utilities. And the Riverwalk Festival was going on, and I walked out there and I saw the tents all out there with these huge stakes that they put in right on top of, in the same area where Riverbore was.
Okay.
And I started to get that, nervous feeling. I went to Betsy, I says, whoever's in charge of this, you have to call a mistake because whatever you put in the ground, you have to call a mistake. on any job. So, you know, that's why when we even set poles, we do mistakes for setting poles.
Right.
We're in a spot where we're kind of close to another utility, we'll hand dig. So you can hand dig with a shovel because you're not going to go through the conduit with a shovel, but we would go through it with an auger. So most of the poles we set now are hand dug because if there's any chance of a utility, because you could be off by a foot or two with a utility gas especially marking, and we could hit that. So if I see anything that's close, especially with gas, we'll do a hand dig on all of it with a shovel, and then you don't even have to worry about it because you're hand digging.
I feel like if we did our due diligence, we can show we did the proper inspection. We've done our job. It's up to the individual. I mean, at Fromm, when I had a tent company come out and do tents on our front lawn, our tent company said, we won't stake that tent unless you have mystic flags out there. I mean, we flagged it for him. He wouldn't stake the tent unless we did.
Right, a
So
good company does that.
it's up to, you know, you have to, at some point in time, people have to be accountable for their actions. And if we've done our job and we've done our due diligence, then I don't feel like there's anything
Homeowner or
more.
business has no idea once the underground is in, the conduit's in, and the wires are in, and you have all the growth or blacktop or rocks or whatever.
They don't know where it's.
Years from now, nobody will know where that's at. We just
Right.
did one on Seguin, and it was through the guy's woods at this residence. Well, 5 years from now, somebody else could buy that home. They have no idea
Right.
where that underground goes from their meter socket to our pole. You
Yeah.
could look at it and not even tell where we put it. So a mistake has to be done. They could be building and then, decide to put a pole barn, in that wooded area, a new customer, and they could dig it up if they don't call it a mistake.
I think, I mean, I don't know, I mean, if you're out, and we're basically talking about commercial property as compared to residential. If you're out, I mean, I don't know, I understand the site plan, whatever, but I mean, if you're, I'm thinking of any of these buildings, I mean, you have I mean, you're just not going out willy-nilly and just putting, okay, we're gonna, let's see, let's dig it down to this height. I'm talking about the structure itself, or this height. I mean, you basically have a plan that tells you where that height is of that building and everything. I don't see how it's that much more to have what the final grade stake is gonna be as compared to, I mean, when you're first going out to build it, you have to know when you're building it, when you're excavating it, you have to know the final grade at that time to know how high to put the footings, how to, where to put everything. I don't know why would be such a big deal to have that. But on this, I also think we're talking about two different things, or not two different things, but I think responsibility line in a couple different places, and one is Bigby, I believe is a lot of responsibility goes to the township. I mean, we're all of a sudden talking about city. The Bigby location is in the township. They didn't come to get a building permit from the
Right,
city.
it's the
They had to
township.
go to the township. They had to, everything is, and therefore then I believe it's through Cascade or whatever. But I believe some of the responsibility of where that wire is or grade or whatever belongs not just, we're talking about here. I believe it also belongs out there at the township, and I don't hear the township talking about it or anything. I mean, certainly it's light and power that's providing the power to that, but it's there to me on that situation. There's some conversations that need to take place with the township.
Well, and it's, Cascade is the one that does all the inspections for Lowell Township. So if they didn't see any issue.
What about putting some little signs if we know that we're shallow and it's just a short distance, caution, buried electric lines here, you see them in different places, buried gas lines, fiber optics or whatever. I know we're trying to have a beautiful area, but if there is something that is shallower than it should be, you could try to drive those signs right through the conduit as you put them in. But,
Go pour concrete over the top of it.
Call it,
There
yeah.
you go.
Well, that's an option too, pave it.
Plant a bunch of flowers in.
Now, mind you, if you look at
Please.
our riser poles or any pole that there's an underground on, in the past, what they used, what they call is molding, and that's not even a conduit, it's just a U-guard molding
Yeah.
that goes from the top of the pole to the bottom. And there is 7,200 volt, 2,400 volt conductors that just go through that molding on there. Well, we haven't done that for years now. We put conduit right up the pole. So the
Right.
conduit, actually with the 2,400 volt and the 7,200 volt wires are right on the side of the pole, going from top down the pole and, going into the ground. So you can actually, if you go to any one of these poles, you'll see the gray conduit there. There's 7,200 volts or 2,400 volt wires going through those that you could actually grab right a hold of that conduit.
Right, or a car bumper could pinch it and short them out. I mean,
Or a lawnmower can
yeah, it's more
run right
vulnerable
through it.
there than.
But I think we're all
So
smart
don't put
enough
your
not
garage
to
sale.
run up and, sink our teeth into it.
Yeah,
so-
no garage sale signs on those little conduits.
Yeah.
And there are no warning signs that tell the public this is, 7,200 volts going through this
Mhm.
conduit, and there's 3 of them.
Yeah. I guess I'm still fuzzy on just the whole process, and maybe this is something for in the future. It's just a good overview of, especially when you try to compare it to other utilities and things like that. I mean, because like sewer and water are slightly different in some cases, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, but you also have to rely on the contractor to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I did 4 construction projects when I was at Fromm, and I'm especially their front parking lot.
Mhm.
I didn't know what code was. I relied on my contractors. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Greg came out and installed water lines underneath the parking lot. All right, Greg, you know what's supposed to be done. I'm going to trust that you're going to do it.
Mhm.
If the building inspector and everybody comes out and signs off all along the way, I'm going to trust that it's done right.
Yeah.
You know?
But I guess like in that case though, if somebody were to put, in the case of that poor politician, if that happens, like what happens after that? If they were to hit a line or something, maybe it's just something to do in the future. Maybe just to educate us as what's the scenario, because I'm kind of wondering, like, is there even any, you asked the question, I think, how do you enforce where they vary their lines? And I don't even know, is there any entity that can enforce that, or is that just, your plan says you will try to do this right, and that's kind of the limit of anybody's enforcement?
Well, that's typically, the way it's been. I'm not aware of any utility that does anything more than what we do.
Well, I know, like, for, like,
There's some liability involved if it's not misdug
Right.
properly. There's a process that you go through the Michigan Public Service Commission now for that, and there's a complaint process and a liability determination process and so on and so forth. But in terms of, is there a way of enforcing or a mechanism that's in place to follow up afterwards?
If there's no violation of building code, I don't know that there's anything that can be done.
yeah, I guess that gets back to just the process. I'm still fuzzy. I don't know what forces people to install a certain depth of line or.
Well, our process says that
Yeah.
you're supposed to install the electric lines at certain depths,
Mhm.
and that's why we go out and inspect to see if it is at those depths.
Right, but then, so it's not, there's no real, like, beyond that, there's nothing.
No,
We
I mean,
really
we
do.
can, if we went out there and it's supposed to be at 36 and it's only at 20, we can say, well, you've got to dig that deeper. But
Mhm.
that's when the trench is open, and so they
Yeah.
close up the trench, go on working, and then at some point in time, when the property's all ready to be energized, we go out 2 months later, 5 months later, 12 months later, and hook up the electric.
Mhm.
Okay. On the 2 projects, so we basically have said from our policy is from this day forward, we're going to take put a ruler or whatever, and we're going to take a snapshot of that. So because basically what it comes down to is to me is people are questioning the integrity of Lowell Light and Power, whether we're doing our job and doing our inspections. So we've addressed that. This is what we're doing moving forward. We're gonna put a tape in there, take a snapshot, I mean, of that, put that in the file, and show that, you know, that there's where we've done that. With the two projects that are in question, I guess number one is how much of the BP is in question? Is it just that final little stretch from where they hit where the sign is? Meaning
Well,
that.
I'm not sure exactly what, nobody's coming to me and say, would you come over and look at this spot? I think this is not within
So again, we don't
within your
know for
parameters.
certain
So,
where the
but
problem
I'm
is.
assuming it's the spot over here between the drive that goes into the car wash and either the pole or our box, just adjacent to that, where the grade comes down to the curb. And so there's probably 3, maybe 4 feet there that potentially it's shallower than what we would request.
Okay, and I'm not saying, I'm throwing these things out to get a feel for, because I'd just like to address them and then move forward.
Right.
Should we look at the BP area? Because what I'm reading, if we encase that in concrete, that meets the national code, correct?
Or not even encase it, but just if it's under pavement or
That's what
concrete.
it means, just pave it over.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So if there's a small section, to resolve that, you know, going back to the BP and say, you know, if you're okay with it, you sign off, or if not, here's a solution. We pave it from the pole, you know, 2 foot wide to wherever it's in there and be done with it. The same thing out at the BP, out at Big B. If we know that there's an area that it's below, if they sign off on it, if, you know, or whatever, and again, does it mean,
Does it change the code for us to go out then and put concrete? Because I know all the frontage and all the plants, I mean, there's so many different.
You'd have to look at each
aspects to what you have to
situation,
have.
but if a
I
little,
guess what's going on
But
with
is it-
knowing where these.
it's not our
spots
cost.
are. Yeah.
Well, that's
it would
the
be
thing.
something
I
that
just
the
don't
building
know that
owner
this
would-
is
I mean,
something
that's something we go recommend to the property owner, I think.
Yeah, but here's the solution, either pave over this little 3
But-
foot by 2
yeah.
foot area or
The rest of the
sign the
question
waiver.
is, just because one spot was found, you know, there could be lots of others.
Mhm.
But that's,
But I think if I trust that we have capable employees that are out doing their job properly.
oh,
and
absolutely.
If the building inspector isn't catching these things and saying, hey, we have a problem, I just don't understand where the issue is. I mean, it sounds to me like it's not, from a public safety perspective, it's not like this is a big public safety risk. Because, I mean, if you have to go drive a stake through it, I mean, where's the risk? You know, I don't see where the risk is.
I understand.
Well, it
Any
depends
more
on-
than if
it-
I have a car accident and run into one of those poles. I mean, so what do we do? Like, put bubble wrap around all of our poles now because there might be a risk that, I mean, really, where's the risk?
I've heard from people in the public that we should put bollards around all our poles. Cement bollards, so if it gets hit, it doesn't hit the pole.
There's a limit to what's practical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've covered that with our current policies.
Yeah.
I think taking pictures from this point forward, we can't be responsible for people changing the grade after we
And it
put
just
stuff in.
doesn't seem to me like there's a huge risk involved, so I don't know.
And a waiver in the
Well, I think that's
future addressing that issue, that if they change the grade, that it's their responsibility.
Well, when it comes to the risk, I think our policy defines the risk that we want to accept. So that's why when something goes in, we say, this is what we'd like you to do. But then there's that, and then there's also, I don't even know what the legal requirements are for power lines or,
There is no legal requirement.
because, I mean, when I was looking at this is just like a guidelines or something
Right.
for very
Exactly.
cable. Because at least speaking from like the aviation industry, there's federal requirements that when you have an airplane you have to do these things, but the FAA has told us, that said that federal regulation doesn't mean, if you meet all the regulations, it doesn't mean you've made a safe airplane. It just means you've met the minimum requirements to that, and then
That's
you really
really
have to go a
comforting.
little beyond to, you know, but that's really up to the demands of what the flying public wants. And so that's kind of why the airplane manufacturers make airplanes at a certain safety level, is that it's what the community, you know, public wants and what the litigation is going to drive them to do if something goes wrong. And there's no law that says they have to make an airplane X safe, you know. There is, but it's at a lower level.
Right.
And so it's probably the same thing here. I mean, there may be laws about, you know, well, like misdig or something. There may be something around that, but it sounds like the rest of this is just guidelines that said this, do this, and things should be safe. And then, I guess maybe just explaining that at some point if the public's that concerned, or that particular member of the public isn't.
Well, the public can't be that concerned if you're going out and digging stuff up.
Yeah.
You're creating more of a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, really.
The intent of this individual, you have to question, whoever's doing it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of thing can happen in your backyard. I mean,
Because it's not very safe. I'm gonna go around town next week and I'm gonna just start digging holes just to see what's
Yeah.
there. I mean, that's not safe. That's not practical,
no.
you know? I think we've
Well, yeah,
done
I think
everything.
having the policy that says, here's what we do when we build something, that tells you that if you were to go dig holes all over BP or Big B Coffee with a shovel, you're not gonna hit anything. And then, you know, why would
But-
anyone be doing that without contacting this dig? I don't know.
I think we've done, yeah,
So-
what is necessary to ensure public safety. And if there's not a risk out there, I just don't feel like we need to go out and start putting cement in different places because one
Okay.
individual decided to go dig stuff up.
I agree.
Mhm. I mean, if something that we happen to know about, we could tell BP, by the way, somebody brought this to our attention. They can decide if they want to put cement there or plant flowers so no one puts a sign there, or I don't know what. But again, it sounds like it's really up to them. And so,
And
I
maybe
think
we,
just being a good neighbor, we could tell them, hey, we've heard this.
right,
just so
and
you guys know.
maybe we have small signs that say, danger, buried electrical, that we can give them if they want to use. I mean, I don't think that's a huge cost on our part. It'd be a public service that we would have something available that a property owner can use if that's the way he or she wants to.
Right. Or they could put 10 inches more dirt back in, put a little berm there
Yeah.
and plant flowers
Be done
on it,
with
you
it.
know?
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing that comes out of all this is you mentioned the taking the photos, and I don't know how much we do that, but it sounds like something I think we really ought to be doing as much as we can, because with digital photos, it's cheap and
Easy
easy
to
to
store.
collect and maintain. And
Right.
I know that like the city has the body cameras on the police officers, which is huge, at least in what I've read from a national scale, that any department that does that, they see huge improvements. And I think ours is the same, but it just gets me to thinking, the more we can do that as we do our work, as long as we're not going overboard and just spending 2 hours on every project taking pictures. But
Right.
I have a dumb question. When we go out to do the inspection, I'm assuming there's paperwork involved in that, that's signed and held somewhere. Does whoever the property owner, do they sign that paperwork as well, saying,
No.
hey, okay, because we don't know the property owner's not necessarily.
They're not
there.
always
So-
there.
Right.
They're not always
Right.
there.
The
they
contract.
don't really need to be. I
They're
mean, it's
just praying for that sticker to be there when they show up.
Right.
And Andrew, the last one I did on C1, I actually did with my phone. You know,
And
I
that's-
have a
that's
ruler,
fine,
all I
yeah.
did was measure 30 inches on a piece of conduit, put it in a hole in a half
Yeah.
dozen spots, and walked
Yeah.
around with my camera and took pictures, and I have them on a file on my computer.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's perfect. I mean,
Best way to
That's
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
I think just having that, because like I said, digital images are so cheap that
Yeah.
if anybody comes back and questions anything you did on that last job, can I say, well, our inspection's good. Well, how do you know it's really there? Well, here's the picture. After
Yeah.
that, it's the property owner's
Yeah.
issue. And I think that'll just go a long way towards helping us. I mean, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, and it sounds like from what we're already doing, but I know a lot of places are relying on photos, just even like aircraft maintenance, the same thing. They install a part, they then take a picture and then collect it up. Just because some other
Because
mechanic
unfortunately,
or
we live in a
some,
society that's
Yeah.
litigious, and you have to do those things.
or like if some private airplane owner decides he's gonna tweak whatever you just installed and you're a licensed mechanic, then he crashes and they're like, hey, you installed that wrong. No, look, here's my picture.
See,
So,
at new,
It happens.
at new sites, I mean, I personally, I mean, I think the contractor, whether he surveys it or whatever, but he marks what the final grade is, what the final grade's gonna be, and then we take the depth and we picture that. Not meaning that he has to go and get a survey or anything, but he's showing the responsibility. I don't think it's our, as low light and power, to say, you know, where's it gonna be, you know, and, because that's, I believe that's the situation we're in now, but if the contractor says, puts a stake in and says, here's where your final grade is, then we can, then we can say, okay, we're going 30 inches below that, or 24, whatever the requirements are, and then we take, as we do that, then we take a picture of that, and to me, and then you can say, low light and power can come back and say, this is where the contractor said the final grade was gonna be, he marked it, we're 30 inches below that at the time that we did that. Now, if they alter it or whatever, then so be it. But again, I just think if you put the onus on the contractor or the home, or the owner or whatever, that you tell us where the final grade's gonna be, so that we're below that. And if it's different than what you told us, then the responsibility is on your shoulders and not on ours, because you told us this is where it's gonna be, so we made sure we were the 30 inches below that.
And that might not,
You'd have to be a final inspection for that. I mean, if you're
Yeah, right.
inspecting, if they've got the trench there and they're saying, you know, you're just asking, where are you planning to build this to?
yeah,
And
I
you're
think
saying,
even
yep,
when they're out laying out the stake, doing the marking for the building and so on and so forth, they have the capacity to shoot an elevation.
Mhm.
And so, you know, maybe that's not a bad idea, is to have them at least mark where the final grade is gonna be at that point.
Yeah, if it's gonna be different.
As opposed to, you know, a full-fledged survey type of thing, maybe just marking final grade at the level. We might be able to include that in our list of things that they need to accomplish as we get ready to do an inspection.
Yeah, or just ask them, is this the planned final grade? If they say yes, okay. I mean, I don't know that if it's just a parking lot, then I'm not gonna change the elevation. No need for them to mark final grade, I guess. But again, I think that, it sounds like from the beginning of this, that's the property owner's responsibility to follow the plan. And so, if you're there doing your inspection, because our policy says if before you cover it up, let us inspect. And if you say, yep, that's 30 inches and that's your final grade, yeah, that's okay. Then we've done our due diligence, and then if they decide they're gonna build a trough there for better drainage of the parking lot, and that impedes into our coverage, well, that's them, not us, because we told them, hey, this is our policy, we verified that you had it where it was, and if you change things after the fact, even if it was before final grade, I mean, you know, they had a plan, we were there to inspect our part of the plan. I don't see why we have to make sure it's at the very end when we come back and say, all right, did you really do what you said you were gonna do? Because that's kind of the whole intent of the plan in the first place.
Thanks.
Okay, I think I have some direction. Mark, any input from the city side?
I'm kind of curious how that relates.
Nothing to enforce.
The property owners will be notified.
On the places that we think possibly maybe because somebody went out and dug holes, but he hasn't really told us where they dug holes.
Property identified.
Kind of
Property
wondering.
owner will be notified.
I'm kind of wondering what the property owner thinks of the
Yeah.
public digging holes.
Okay.
I'd be kind of annoyed if somebody did that at my house.
I guess my only comment is that this was a policy issue that needed to be discussed here, and
Yep.
you've had a great discussion, and I certainly appreciate that.
I think this is really useful.
Good.
I mean, the whole situation surrounding it was,
Mhm.
you know, weird, but
Right.
that's good.
Okay.
I mean, this is why we're here.
Absolutely. And so, the culmination is that now you have a full policies and procedures handbook.
Thank
It's
you.
all-
The test will be next
It's all
month.
current, yeah, the test will be next month. But one of the things we should do is maybe start going through these and pick 2 or 3 a month and we're gonna review. Just, not only does it help you become familiar with them, but it also, we can bring to light anything that we think might be different than when the policy was initiated or something that may have changed in the industry. I mean, we do look at them on a regular basis, but most of these, I think, were implemented probably in the early 2000s, and some of them maybe have been revised.
09, I think.
I think we revised the whole manual in 2009, but I
Okay.
think most of that was a formatting thing,
Oh, okay.
as opposed to actually making changes to individual policies. So if I go back and look at the older policy books, a lot of them were first initiated in 95, 98, 97, some revisions
So-
in 2003 and 4.
So do any of these policies like expire or have like a review date? I know like a lot of the stuff, and we deal with at work, there's like, this is our
Must be
policy, and every
reviewed every
4
month.
years,
Yeah.
the policy team or whoever it is reviews it.
No, we
Because some
don't-
policies have to get reviewed every year, some every 10. I mean, it depends on what they are, but.
Right. We don't have any system in place for doing that.
Okay.
Or any guidelines that would say this policy needs to be reviewed more often than this one.
Yeah, I mean, even just starting with a general one of every X years. or
Sure.
something.
Sure. So again, I think
wouldn't
that's
hurt
something we
anything.
should, we should just start
I think that's a good idea.
going through.
And then
Okay.
make sure we put a revision date. A lot of them have it, not all of them do.
Right. If there's no revision date, they were never revised.
Be nice to know when they were adopted.
1896.
I wasn't here then. All right.
saying.
September.
All right. Thank you, I appreciate the discussion. I have a few more items to just mention here quickly. We do have the open house coming up October 11th, Saturday, where we do our hot dogs and invite the public for lunch and pink pumpkins and those types of things. So anybody that wants to volunteer to work for that, making hot dogs and serving.
What's the window for that?
I believe it's 10 to 2.
11 to 2.
11 to 2, yeah, 3-hour window, 11 to 2.
Okay,
So
go
we're
ahead
usually
and
here
sign
about
me up.
Day, sorry.
Okay.
So that's the 10th. We're also participating in a community cleanup that day as part of the Harvest Festival down at the fairgrounds. So I think Sharon will probably be down there most of the day. Maybe another employee or so. We're collecting, recycling like we do here in the spring. So we'll be involved in both activities that day.
Franklin Energy is coming
Is
also.
that a holiday weekend?
What was that?
Franklin Energy is coming.
Columbus
got
Day is on
fireworks.
Monday.
Okay. Is that coming Monday?
The 13th is Columbus Day.
That's what I'm asking. I won't be available.
Okay,
I'll be working right over there at the post office.
okay. We can pop
I'll be
over for
available.
lunch. Have a hot dog.
Gene and Greg.
All right.
Sorry.
So if you just contact Sharon with your availability or interest in participating, you can do bucket rides or whatever you want to do. The annual summary to customers for our performance on our renewable energy program and our energy efficiency program will probably be in the mailing for September billing. So just let you know that that's coming up. We had the audit finished in August, and it was a good audit.
Clean audit.
Steve took a sigh of relief when that was over, but it was done in, I think, 3 days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
About 3 days, so it was
Good.
fantastically smooth, clean, and short.
They should be here next month.
Peter should be
to
here next
present.
month to
They weren't able to make
review the
tonight.
audit statistics with us. I also have, once in a once, probably twice a year, we look at what's called the quarterly hedge plan, and that's for our power with Michigan Public Power Association and BPA. So I'm going to hand those out for your review, and it's really your homework assignment for next month. I usually pick once or twice a year where we just take a look at that and give you an update on where we stand. So I'll give you a month in advance to browse through it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit next month.
Okay.
Craig, I think that's.
Oh, that's something else. That's the last part of my packet. Okay. That's the payables. There's plenty. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that we participated again with FROM in putting together a grant application for the MEAP funds, for the money that we're collecting for the state for the home heating people in the winter. And FROM almost doubled their grant. They got $57,900, I think, is the final number that the state awarded them for this next year to use in the program.
It's a 2-year grant.
It's a 2-year grant, so they'll receive that amount for 2 years.
Okay.
And so they're expanding their programs. Sharon has been involved and will continue to be involved. She represents Lowell Light and Power, and we have not. We've done that gratis. We've participated gratis, and so Sharon actually does some teaching. She holds classes for the people that participate in the program, helps develop them, works with the people that are doing the inspections on the homes. So we're donating a significant amount of time to this project, and we think it's great that FROM's going to be able to expand and probably double the number of people that they'll be able to service through that this year with this money. We have gotten a lot of
volunteers.
as long as, and we have with FROM have received a lot of publicity throughout the state for this program. So a lot of kudos go out to FROM and Tamla last year, and Sharon. And, it's a program that other communities look at. They give away $89 million. And it's significant to them that we get 57,000 out of 89 million. I mean, so it's pretty cool that we're involved in this and get some headlines for it. So that's all I have, other than the payables that are in your packet.
Can I throw out one little suggestion on the schedule of meetings that we get every month?
Yes, ma'am.
Tiny little thing, but by the time we get this, we're already kind of halfway through it.
Mm-hmm.
Could we maybe put one more week,
Sure.
like into the next month on there,
Absolutely.
just to give us a little bit more?
Leeway.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, I think.
All right, that brings us to complaint registers. We're on a new roll of 1 month with no complaints.
Correct.
Congratulations. Our next Light and Power Board meeting is Thursday, October 9th. And that brings us to board comment. Tina, we'll start with you.
All right, I do have a comment. I would like to say that I'm really proud of how Lowell Light and Power is moving forward, and there's been a lot of discussion. When I brought those pamphlets that was put together and showed everybody at Blue Cross Blue Shield what we're doing and how it works, it was a lot of fun discussion for them, and it really brought out a lot of people that I didn't realize actually lived in Lowell and works also with me at Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that was really fun, and I'd like to invite the board and everybody at the table and all the good folks out there. Is, of course, Fallisburg Festival is coming up, and we really do enjoy your support. And of course, I'll be at the apple dumpling booth all day for the both days. So if you have any questions or concerns, come on down and we'll talk. That's what I got.
Thanks. All right. Andrew.
I have just one comment, and it really is related to Light and Power. But I'll start off just by saying that Tuesday was my first time dropping off a kid to school. Because Henry's attending preschool at Curiosity Corner at Bushnell. And there was a couple interesting observations related to that. One is, well, I went to Bushnell K through 4, so it's kind of weird to kind of go back there and send him to school there. Right in front of the same sign that I used to walk in front of. I never really thought that would happen, I guess, but apparently it does. The other thing I noticed is that as I'm dropping him off, it's like, hey Amanda, look, there's the biout adjuster. And what's neat is that it was really visible, but I almost didn't notice it because it's not very obtrusive. And I just think they did a really good job of, placing it and whatever else is going on. I mean, it's nice that from the school you can see it very easily, and it looks like it belongs, I think is. And so it reminds me of when I was in Germany, there was 1 or 2 places that looked like 10 times better than all the others, and this is one of those. So I like how they're doing it, and I think it's just going to be a nice thing to have there, that it's just something different, and the fact that it is visible but not an eyesore, I think is a good thing.
Great, thank you.
Perry?
I have a request. This is a donation from Lowell Light and Power, and it's a simple one. We met the trails last night, and we've had some vandalism on Alden Nash. Because of the grade going up Alden Nash from G Drive, there's 2 rest areas that we had to put in, and we've had one bench stolen from one of those areas. And what I'd like to, and we talked about it, what I'd like to do is see if we could get Lowell Light and Power to auger in, the what you use to the guidelines, so anchors, so that we could put a chain or a cable around. We've got to replace one, and the one's still there. So that's my big request from Lowell Light and Power, is if we could. There's going up the hill, there's 2 rest areas. If we could put an anchor in there, that would help that group in trying to keep their equipment. And that's,
Weren't they screwed in the concrete, I thought?
Yeah, I
we
think
tried, right there on those 2 platforms are asphalt and not concrete.
Oh, okay.
So we tried to, using RGK bolts, screw them into the asphalt, but anybody can really just grab a hold of them and yank them out. And obviously somebody did. So if we could do that sometime in the near future, the trails would greatly appreciate it.
If you make a request, Rotary might replace that for you.
We have one that's located right now on the bridge by corner of G and Alden Nash, and technically we can't, bridges, we had to have the boardwalk, we had to have 14 feet because federal money, so
Right. So you have to move it.
that actually has to come off, and because that is bolted down, we'll take that off and put that in the other location and then cable them. So that's my request from Lowell Light and Power. Thank you.
Tamla?
Just kudos to the staff here for everything, and to Sharon for helping with the meat program at Fromm. She was a huge help last year when we launched it, and it was a good grant this time around, and it's good that it's a 2-year cycle. That'll help out a lot. So I just appreciate that you guys are involved in that, and Sharon's been a huge help to all of that, so hopefully she'll continue to do that. I know Dawn will appreciate it.
Mark?
Nothing. I'll defer to the mayor.
I'd just say thank you for having that discussion on the policy of buried things, so. Thank you.
All right. I don't have too much, just echoing other board members. light and power is really headed in a great direction. You look at the biodigester, the combustion turbines that, we're once again generating power and helping with the FROM stuff. It's just really a great organization. You guys do a wonderful job. Congratulations to Steve on the audit doing so well. We really have a great group of employees here that do a great job.
I would move that we go to closed session for contract negotiation update.
Second.
I have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Obviously, you don't get your folder back this week.
Oh my goodness, you have numbers on there you need.
Did you write notes all over that? Were you doing a quote?
Good job.
Oh, that was what was handy when I was getting messages off the phone.